My name is Negarra A Kudumu. My work lies at the intersection of art and healing. I am a spiritualist involved in several African diasporic spiritual traditions, namely African American conjure and Afro-Cuban Palo Monte. I am also a curator and a writer who keeps company with artists and scholars who think about their practices as long-term acts of self-regard with a view towards liberation. My current working definition of liberation is informed by Toni Morrison, who said that the function of freedom is to free someone else, and that freedom is ultimately about being able to choose one's responsibility. And I would also add to that, to whom one will be responsible. My definition is also informed by the spiritual practices to which I adhere, which value vitality, prioritize healing, and that provide me the tools to support myself and others in the constant pursuit of liberation. My thinking on liberation starts with self-regard and the way it catalyzes the love for self that makes liberation possible. Liberation, in my observation and in my experience, cannot be achieved without love. It also cannot be achieved without the help of others. I am reminded here of the line in Beloved that says, "She is a friend. She is a friend of my mind. She gather me, man. The pieces I am, she gathered them and give them back to me all in the right order." This quote adeptly describes one of the most unadulterated forms of love and kinship that people can express for each other. This is what I have received from my mother and grandmother. This is what I have been extraordinarily fortunate to receive from my friends, notably Kadi and Barrett, who are here today. This is what Simone Leigh and Rashida Bumbre have done for us all with Loophole and Sovereignty. This quote is also a simplified explanation of the goal of the initiatory rites of many African diasporic spiritual traditions that take the unhealed through complex, time-intensive processes, put them back in the right order and on the right path. That said, in the remaining time, I will share a brief history of St. Anthony, Kempa Vita, and their legacies in the African diaspora, thank you, Tina, African diaspora of the Americas, and to share my in-progress thinking about why Toni Morrison merits heavy consideration in any discussion on liberation. Saint Anthony of Padua is a Catholic saint of Italian origin that found his way to the Kingdom of Congo due to the presence of Italian Capuchin missionaries. Saint Anthony is the patron saint of lost things, people, and even spiritual items. He is the patron saint of Lisbon and many places in Portugal, as well as the former Portuguese colonies. His veneration is important to note here in light of the significant populations of Africans from West Central Africa who were forcibly removed from their lands and brought to the African diaspora of the Americas. Catholic or not, Anthony's presence amongst people of African descent in the diaspora of the Americas left such an indelible mark in the collective subconscious and is evidenced by the immense number of African-descended individuals throughout the African diaspora of the Americas who are named some derivation of the name Anthony. Please raise your hand if you are either related to or grew up with individuals named Anthony, Antonia, Antoine, Antoinette. Okay. I'd also like to mention one of the most famous Anthonys is our much beloved Toni Morrison, but more on her shortly. Kempa Vita, also known as Dona Beatriz, was a Congolese prophetess who in 1704, at the age of 20, became the leader of a movement to put an end to various civil wars amongst diverse factions of the kingdom's nobility who were vying for power. The political situation was ripe for exploitation by various factions and contributed to the growth of the Atlantic slave trade. Kempavita was initiated into a religious society called Kimpasi. The Kimpasi Society's primary goal was to identify, eradicate, and heal the wounds of any suffering levied at the community. When a problem was identified, a group of initiated practitioners would come together to organize healing work to resolve the issue. This society also organized the initiation of new practitioners who, upon initiation, were thought to no longer be the people they were previously, and from that point on were endowed with new abilities and were oftentimes exempt from previous social restrictions. The relationship to Catholicism for citizens of the Kingdom of Congo was quite different from the colonial realities in other parts of the African continent. Catholicism was understood and received by the Congolese elite and nobility as a powerful socio-political tool, so much so that many of the elite willingly converted. Catholic schools taught by Congolese people were established to educate the young. Amongst the practitioners of the indigenous traditions of the kingdom, Catholic saints were viewed as the spirits of individuals who did incredible things during their life and now dead could continue to do incredible things when worked by knowledgeable spiritual practitioners. This understanding was synonymous with indigenous understandings of similar kinds of spirits called Nkita. As such, it is not a stretch to consider the respect that a saint such as Anthony commanded and why the movement led by Kempavita invoked his name. It is important to note that the legacies of the Kimpasi Society can be found in many places and spiritual traditions throughout the diaspora, namely in Afro-Cuban Palo Monte and Espiritismo Cruzado, African-American Conjure, Haitian Vodou, the Black Spiritualist Church, and also the Kojic Church. What all of these healing traditions have in common is technology for this liberation of the spirit and by extension of the mind and body, a focus on vitality and by extension a minimization of suffering. They also have in common, whether acknowledged or not, the centrality of women to the successful realization of the parallel processes of healing and liberation within Black communities. These archetypes have been exemplified by women such as Cecile Fatima of Haiti, Mother Leafy Anderson and Catherine Seals of the Black Spiritualist Church, Aunt Caroline Dye, Na Secundina and Na Filomena of Cuba, Queen Nanny of the Maroons, the women of the Dismal Swamp Maroons, Ella Baker, Fannie Lou Hamer, and Toni Morrison of Lorain, Ohio. In 1704, Kempavita fell ill and was thought to be nearing death. For 7 days, she suffered immensely with fever and hallucinations. All of a sudden, her condition began to calm, and she had a vision of a Capuchin monk. In the vision, this man, who she identifies as St. Anthony, speaks to her, saying that God sent him to her to deliver a message to the people of the Kingdom of Congo. He told her that the restoration of the Kingdom of Congo was her primary focus and explained that anyone who threatened her would be severely punished by God. He then went on to explain that he had attempted in earnest to relay this message to others in 3 other cities, but they all ignored him. Now Kempavita was the chosen one. In this moment, Kempavita was charged with the task of healing the Kingdom of Congo. Through spiritual intervention, she moved from a disordered state to a reordered state. From then on, the movement took root, and Kempavita moved throughout her kingdom as the embodiment of St. Anthony, preaching a ministry that affirmed and uplifted the indigenous spiritual practices of the citizens of Congo, and which denounced the injustice heaped upon the Congolese citizenry by both the colonial presence and infighting amongst various factions of the Congolese elite. At a certain point, nearly 80,000 individuals are purported to have converted to this Antonian doctrine. In 1943, at the age of 12, Chloe Wolford converted to Catholicism and took St. Anthony of Padua as her confirmation name. The name was later shortened to Toni, and the world would know this incredible individual as Toni Morrison. Morrison extends the legacy of Kempavita's Antonian ministry and its diverse diasporic legacies through a career dedicated to writing abjectly beautiful stories about African American people. In these stories, we were both her subject and her primary audience. When questioned about her commitment to us, she was unwavering and doubled down further to reinforce her position. She encouraged us to be clear on our mission and to not let anyone distract us or waste our time. Like many of the women I have already named, and certainly like Kempavita and her Antonian ministry, Toni Morrison had an acute sense of the realities of the world she lived in. She had conducted all the research. She needed more than just data and information. She needed imagination. It is useful here to consider imagination as a lay terminology for what we spiritualists refer to as seeing, clairvoyance, or spiritual sight. The ability to see or imagine creates possibility for action. When there is possibility, you can make a plan. You become legible to yourself and, by extension, to those like you who share your lived experience. In the case of Na Secundina in Cuba, you can bring the dead back to life. Or in Cecile Fatiman's case, kick off the Haitian Revolution that set the example for subsequent liberatory movements across the Caribbean and other parts of the diaspora. Or in Fannie Lou Hamer's case, advocate for voting rights for Black people in the state of Mississippi and inaugurating the Freedom Farm Collective. Toni Morrison states in her essay, Rememory, in her book, The Source of Self-Regard, but writing is not simply recollecting or reminiscing or even epiphany. It is doing, creating a narrative infused, in my case, with legitimate and authentic characteristics of the culture. This is an important point, especially in the contemporary moment, because so often discussions of liberation do not move past the discursive. History shows us that liberation in all its iterations, interior, intimate, or public, have always been about ongoing deeds whose results are eventually observable. I'm not convinced that our self-regard can be activated or enlivened if we have not put it into practice in the world. To that end, Toni Morrison remains important in these discussions because she did not just speak empty words. She was, to paraphrase Little Richard when speaking of Jimi Hendrix, our star. She poured her words, potent with the love she had for Black people and Black life, into the dipper and poured them back down onto the world, us. In closing, I am going to share with you the caption of an Instagram post I wrote on October 15th, 2020, the day after we learned that Simone was going to be the U.S. representative for the Biennale. Yesterday, it was announced that Simone Leigh would be the first Black woman artist to represent the United States at the forthcoming 2022 Venice Biennale. I am elated, of course, but not for the obvious reasons. I first saw Leigh's work in May of last year at the Guggenheim, the magnitude of which is still sinking in. By August, Toni Morrison had died. Morrison's death got me thinking about the dearth of individuals in the world who truly love Black people, specifically Black women. Morrison's death meant one less person physically in the world who loved us so fiercely. The pain of that loss ran especially deep because Morrison was mighty and prophetic with and in her love for us. Let's get this page together. I lamented this out loud with our dear friend Rashida as I mourned Morrison. I see in Leigh's work the love and commitment Morrison gave us generously and consistently through her novels and public discourse. It is honest, it is steadfast, it is not conditioned on anything other than our existence. The importance of Leigh's work for me is that she prioritizes the creation and maintenance of spaces within which Black women are center. The discourse is not just about us, it is for us and by us. This is a very big deal in a world that seeks our demise. Dare I say it, this is liberation work. Congratulations, Simone Leigh, but more importantly, thank you for keeping us in the center in word and in deed. Thank you.